What's going to end up happening is a lot of the blue collar guys right now, the trucks on the truck, the guys who are running a subpar service business, are going to end up working for the Gen Zs who are building this empire, or the millennials who are building a 5 to 10 truck empire. They're going to end up having to go work for them because they're going to get them out of the market because they're not nice to customers, they don't respond on time, all the stuff that consumers see.
Hey, welcome to What the Franchise, the regular podcast where we talk about franchise development issues, how to grow a franchise system, topics for franchisors and people thinking about getting into franchising. Today here in, mostly sunny Franklin, Tennessee, I have my fellow Franklin, Tennessee franchisor, Aaron Harper, who I've known at ChemDry and Patch Boys, is now stepping out and announced that he purchased Rolling Suds, which is a relatively new pressure washing franchise, as the CEO, and is after years in the trenches is going for it. That's my favorite thing. It's well, Aaron, it's so nice to have you on the podcast today.
Yeah, no, I'm excited. I've listened to this podcast for years, and you and I have known each other a long time, so I'm excited to be included and talking about franchising.
Yeah, well, tell us a little bit about Rolling Suds. Like, what kind of brand is Rolling Suds?
Sure. Yeah, so as you mentioned, I started with ChemDry and Patch Boys, so I've always been in the home service space. So when I started looking for businesses last year to franchise, it was all in the home service space is what I evaluated dozens of businesses and ended up partnering with Rolling Suds guys because it's a 33-year-old brand. They only do residential and commercial power washing, soft washing, pressure washing, and roof washing. So very niche in the sense that it's like they're not doing windows and gutters and these other things that oftentimes bring more customer complaints or have lower margins. They've just become, the leaders in residential and commercial power washing. So I really liked that because with one of the brands I worked on in the past, Patch Boys, it was just very niche. They just did drywall repair. And I know a lot of the businesses that you've franchised as well are very niche. And I really like niche businesses. I think they're easy and simple, and you can get high margins because customers and consumers, I'm one of them, like to hire companies that do one thing or two things and do it better than anyone else. Right?
Yeah, I mean, they say the saying is the riches are in the niches. and the other saying I think that applies to that is the market celebrates specialists and forgets generalists. So you can be, for instance, a pressure washer thing, but if you specialize in washing or cleaning a certain type of like space, like say commercial spaces where you have patios. I know my coffee shops here in town, when I ran coffee shops, we had a Just Love Coffee on Music Row.
Yep.
And it was, could never keep the patio clean. We had to have it pressure washed, and I would have killed to work with you guys because you guys have a truck and you bring your own water supply, and it works much better for a commercial space, but being a specialist. Well, the topic today, I think, is something you and I kind of care a lot about, is what we've seen in franchising. And for now several years, home service franchise or service franchising in general has been the top segment. That wasn't always the case. Service was number 4 or 5 on the list, below food and health and beauty and gyms and, services. And you got down to the handyman services and the niche trade-based service and things like pressure washing and dryer vent cleaning and closets and all that stuff. And now that's the mega category in franchising. That's what everybody wants to be in. That's what the majority of new systems that are coming out are in that space. I launched 4 systems last year. You've launched yours. Our friend Daniel Claps just launched another one. It's like one after another. And it's driven by, if you look at Home Advisor's category list of all the different specific services Home Advisor and Angie's List generates leads for, there's 465-ish categories, and each one could have 5 or 6 systems in it. So even though there's lots of people that do pressure washing, there's always room for a better pressure washer.
Yeah, totally.
But what I think is really interesting, and you saw this at Patch Boys and even at ChemDry, and all the Belfour brands, is just that this idea that for years, people were trained to go to college and get a white collar job because that was a respectable thing to do. And now a whole generation of millennial, Gen Z, kind of call them zillennial. I guess you're kind of in that group. You kind of say yourself a millennial.
Totally.
They're looking at service-based businesses, trade-based businesses, things that have a blue-collar underpinning is really the easiest way to make significant money and create wealth that's really the new white collar career, is running a service business. Like that's a complete turnaround in our culture. What do you think about that? Do you find that to be the
I
case?
couldn't I couldn't agree more. I mean, what we've seen in both franchising and is you have these private equity companies or
Yeah.
people who have like, white collar backgrounds coming into service businesses. And it's because for years you've had blue collar people running these service businesses and just frankly running them improperly.
Yeah.
And so there's this trend of like white collar folks and a new generation of people seeing an opportunity to come into these businesses and really stand out in a way that, I mean, the bar, we used to say with Patch Boys, the bar's on the floor. All we have to do is show up on time,
Yeah.
answer the phone, call them back, and give them like an estimate on an iPad, and you win the work, right? And so it's all very low hanging fruit. And with Patch Boys, most of the people who came into the business and bought the franchise were coming from a white collar background, cybersecurity, medical sales, running IT businesses or running other businesses. And that was like, so it was very few people that were like, hey, I want to come in and do drywall or whatever. And for my business specifically now, the one I'm franchising, we're looking for that kind of empire builder, the one who wants to have multiple trucks and build a team and get sales guys. Like that's what we're looking for. And there's a lot of people out there that are wanting those types of businesses.
Oh yeah, especially, everybody's laid off from home. If you look at the tech sector layoffs, and it was 50, 60, 100,000 layoffs.
Yeah.
And it's not clear that we're in a recession, but companies are kind of cleaning their balance sheets up and getting their P&L right sized and making smart tactical decisions. And so many work from home people are suddenly laid off from home as their entire department gets outsourced overseas or just isn't as necessary as it once was thought to be. And that creates a whole demand for service businesses, which are affordable. Like yours is a little higher investment than a typical one because you have some specialized equipment. But I mean, they start in the 40s, like Patch Boys, you could get in 50, 60, $70,000.
Yeah, I mean, it's just like with my business, for example, like they're coming in with like a 2-man truck and a box truck and 900 gallons of water. Like there's not anyone else who's doing that in these markets. And so they're able to attack a lot of these commercial jobs that most, guys who do this on the nights and weekends and tow a trailer behind or buy a piece of equipment from Home Depot, like they just can't do those types of jobs. And so, our business is half of it's commercial, half of it's residential for the founders. And, so I kind of talk a little bit about with candidates, like the total attackable market, right? Like with like mosquitoes, it's like anyone who has mosquito problems or whatever.
Right.
Like with this business, power washing, like every building that you drive by needs to be power washed.
Well, it's our lighting squad, which is a nuisance electrical kind of franchise, does hang ceiling fans. And so we carry a specialized ladder that Little Giant designed for us. It's called a skyscraper. It's a 21-foot double-sided A-frame. It's a beast of a ladder, but it allows us to reach 26 feet in the air in the middle of a room, which is really hard to do. Like, so I think in Franklin, Brentwood, we can get up to those second and third story atrium kind of lights that people can't, why they put changeable light bulbs 30 feet off the ground, like who knows. But our ads for that business target, like the ad says literally like everybody needs a friend in high places. And
cool.
We have this picture of this ginormous ladder in somebody's house and they're up changing a ceiling fan that's literally 20 feet off the ground. There's no way an average homeowner, much less an electrician, nobody wants that work. It's nuisance work, but it's super lucrative and it's a really good service. Like to your point, my Just Love Coffee on Music Row, which is on Demonbreun, had a beautiful patio and we didn't have a water source. Like there was no spigot anywhere within 100 feet of that patio, like anywhere. Like there was no way to get, I have a pressure washer. Like I could have run a gazillion hoses through the thing, but there wasn't even a spigot in the back. It was it was an unworkable situation. So like, and everyone on that street had the same issue, just they weren't plumbed correctly. So they didn't have kind of water hoses somewhere.
Yep.
And so you're like the solution for that. It's a very specific problem that a customer has. And I think as we've seen service get more specialized in this idea that the monetizable trades, the things like learning how to clean spaces like that.
Right.
That's a repeat service that, that's a long-term, like I would have had you every 90 days come do my patio just at night, because you could come in after hours or when we were closed and not disrupt the flow of the business. How many spaces are there like that where there's no water supply, or so, it's 500 feet from a spigot. There's no way you could pump hoses that far. Nobody has 500 feet of hose anyway.
Right.
It's much easier to pay. It's just that kind of category of work is really important. But what do you think about this idea of people maybe out, because you're doing a lot, you're intentionally recruiting existing white collar people. What do you think about a whole generation of people getting into franchising and not going to college or not going into a white collar career at all and thinking that, a Rolling Suds or a Dryer Vent Superheroes or a Lighting Squad is the career choice of the path of choice?
So I actually have a call with someone in an hour and a half who's a graduate of the Titus Center. And last year with Patch Boys, I awarded a franchise to two graduates of the Titus Center, which I know you're involved in and stuff. I think that generation is not going to go get in $100,000 in debt and try to get a $50,000 a year job and pay it off for 25 years. I think they saw my generation and make those mistakes and they're just not interested in it and they're more entrepreneurial. And, you and I think we've talked in tandem about this, but from a franchise development, perspective, they're also not going to go through 13 steps before they get their questions answered about marketing, right? They want to know what they want to know and they want to know it in that first call. And so from a franchise development perspective, if franchisors can't adapt to younger generations buying processes, they're going to basically process themselves out of being a candidate for that Gen Z's business to purchase. And I think you've done a really good job of that. It's been a very big focus of mine is making sure that the process adapts to the candidate rather than the candidate having to adopt to the process, because that's just not fun.
Yeah, I'm closing on my second Palm Beach Atlantic franchisee, a guy named Daniel Plord. We're super excited. He's opening up in West Palm Beach, a Dryer Vent Superheroes, closing tomorrow. I have a second one coming 3 weeks after that for Boca Raton. So that's 2 this year since January 1st. I've got we're going to have to start fighting over those guys.
I know. I'm happy to do it. We'll just go
have a wrestling match over who can
We'll just try to get out of them. We'll have a wrestling match.
Man, they're just they're unbelievable entrepreneurs. Like I'll take everyone I can get. And I'm happy any of them ends up anywhere in franchising. And,
well, they'll work harder, right? Like they're not entitled, which, some people get burnt out over years in corporate America. These guys are like, I want to do this now. This is my first thing, and I want to make it better than anything else. And, some of them don't have the means necessarily, but they can get a loan from their parents. They can, they can get some funding or whatever, or there's other creative ways to get them signed up, but they're going to be really hard workers. And
but how many business schools are there like that in the United States that as a franchisor?
Like the Titus Center?
Yeah, just how many business schools have, they don't even have to have a concentration in franchising. That's an unusual one. But, maybe it's time for us to start doing road shows to business schools and talk to entrepreneurship programs and even go to historically Black colleges and say, look, man, you want to kill it in the market? You want unbelievable diversity and inclusion? Come franchise with us. And I waive franchise fees for those types of people. That's my strategy on the creative side.
Awesome.
And it works really well because I'd just rather have it. It kind of brings back to the point that you made. One of the reasons I do broker deals, I work with franchise brokers on all my brands, and I have some really talented brokers I really like. A lot of the candidates I see my clients place from brokers are these kind of middle-aged, 50, 60. They're people coming transitioning out of a corporate career, and they've been laid off, and they're a little grouchy. They have money, and they financially can do it. But do they really have the drive, and are they at the point in their life where they really want to hustle at building a service? Because it's work to build a service brand.
Oh, it's a lot of work.
It's not a retail space where people come in. You have to go out and get every single customer, and it takes a unique drive, and you have to have a sense of urgency and enthusiasm. And I just think the young people rediscovering trades, things like plumbing and electrical and framing and design work and just normal monetizable skills where you can add value. They're not afraid to fail Nick Lopez, our friend Nick Lopez, who
Yeah.
built Lime Painting, I joke about it. He still operates his office out of his mom's basement in Denver. Like literally runs an amazing franchise system with almost 100 units out of his mom's basement. Like he's the ultimate millennial. He's late to launch. It's like you can get an office. You're old enough and you have enough money to buy an office. But it's funny how that culture shift is. They think that, and you did a good job of explaining this, that really the sophistication of most trades is pretty poor. Like people who start up businesses, we joke about them, the chuck in a truck and the murder van crowd. They roll up with the white van with the sign that says free candy inside on the outside. Like they're not, they don't respond to leads. They're not really sophisticated. They're technicians. They're good at doing the trade. And the opportunity in service right now is to not be the person to be the empire builder, to be the person that wants to own 10 trucks and get to $5 million. And, a franchise has this unbelievable path for people to follow that's very systemized. So we talk to electricians for the lighting squad all the time, and they're technicians, and they're the technicians that want to get off the truck. They want to have a life, and they want to hire electricians. And so it's a good business for them.
Yeah. And I think a lot of the Gen Zs and even some millennials. I mean, millennials are turning 40 now, right? Yeah. Like that's why I'm talking, you think millennial, it's like, oh, mid-20s. It's like, no, the mid-20s guys are Gen Z. Oh, yeah. And, a Gen Z, is going to look at college, right? College is 4 years of time. It's, let's just say $100,000 to $150,000. So you lose 4 years of time and you spend $150,000. Whereas you could take $150,000, finance it over X number of years, get into a service business where now you have ownership in that. It's a better investment. And I think that if there's more young entrepreneurs that can see that and see that as, if you parallel the two, it's actually a better deal for you to say, okay, this franchise system makes sense. I'm going to invest 150 in this and I'm going to go work it and I'm going to learn how to run a business. And now I'm going to have equity. And in 5 to 10 years, maybe I sell that business and I invest it. Right? Like that's a better deal than a better
deal. I mean, you're learning business skills that you'll have the rest of your life. Like you're learning how to make money the rest of your life. I tell my kids, I've got 6 kids and 2 of them are deep in franchising. A third one's going to Palm Beach next year. I said, you have to grow a money tree. That's the secret to life is you have to literally grow a money tree in your backyard and you have to learn how to care for it. And a money tree really is just learning how to run a business. Because if you get in when you were 19 and 20, like say you didn't go to college or you weren't sure if you want to go to college. I was talking to a lighting squad guy here in Nashville that's opening up in Nashville, and he's doing it he's a realtor here in Franklin. His son is nephew is a licensed electrician in Ohio and wants to move here. He's 26. He got married. They want to settle in Nashville because it's a hip, fun place. And he's got a 17-year-old homeschool high school kid. And so the high school kid's going to work on the truck with the nephew 3 days a week, and they're going to scale that business like as a family business. It's going to be great. The high school kid doesn't want to go to college. He wants to learn how to run a business. He's got this idea that entrepreneurship's where all the action's at, and smart kid, that's not an unusual thing today. It's really see that over and over and over again. And what do you see the future of service franchising over the next 5? What's our runway for the rest of the 2020?
Yeah, I mean, I think that people are going to continue to enter the market. I think franchisors are going to continue to enter the market. Currently, like one of the reasons I moved forward with Rolling Suds, I had a dozen plus options all in the service space, was there's no national leader in power washing. It doesn't exist. There's no power washing franchise that has 200-300 units and is in every major market setting standards for the industry. It's a super unregulated business. Anyone who goes and buys a $300 machine from Home Depot and a $25 website and $10 worth of business cards can say they're a power washer. And you're using like pretty harmful chemicals on a building if you're doing it the right way. And, that could damage things, right? So it's a completely unregulated business.
All the bleach takes the finish off of light fixtures. We deal with that in the lighting squad all the time. People have just ruined light fixtures over improper chemical usage. It happens a lot.
And so to answer your question, I think that a lot of franchisors as well as franchisees are going to come into the blue collar industry and try to reset the standards, right? Yeah. And what's going to end up happening is a lot of the blue collar guys right now, the trucks on the truck, the guys who are running a subpar service business are going to end up working for the Gen Zs who are building this empire, or the millennials who are building a 5 to 10 truck empire. They're going to end up having to go work for them because they're going to get them out of the market because they're not nice to customers. They don't respond on time, all the stuff that consumers see.
And it's Mike Rowe, the dirty jobs guy you see on TV. He's worth really listening to if you're a service franchisor. He has some really excellent kind of ways to position points. He talks about how, we got rid of VOTEC schools in most high schools, like in affluent areas. We just killed the VOTEC movement. And so it's almost like, a service franchise is a way for you to develop talent. Like you can recruit techs and move your techs up to manager, move your managers up to area operators, and you can build an empire. If you were to start, like if you had to go over and you were 22 or 21, maybe you didn't go to school, or you went to school and dropped out, decided you weren't sure school wasn't for you, and you had the opportunity to do a service business, would it have changed your life? Like what would that have been like if somebody kind of opened the door for you?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. I'll be 35 in March. I went to college and I studied, and luckily I didn't take out a ton of debt. I was fortunate, but I would have, right? Because that was the thing you do. You graduate, you go to college.
Yeah.
I got out, I got a job that was, it was an internship. First of all, I'm working for free now. And then they got promoted to a $30,000 job, working in the film and television industry. And then I did that and I was like, I want to do this. And then I got into franchising. But if I knew what I know now about franchising back then, and it was like, okay, I'm going to go spend 4 years and go to college. And maybe after graduating, I might make $50,000, $60,000 a year as an analyst or whatever, like best case scenario. I would take that money and I'd go find a franchise that like I know could support me and tell me what to do and how to scale to $1 million or a $2 million business. And I'd invest my time, energy, and resources into that. And I think, again, that's just what you and I are seeing with a lot of the younger generations. They're like, wait a minute, like you're not going to, you tricked my cousin or whatever. You're not tricking me. I'm going to figure out a way to move into this business. And franchising is the perfect way to do that, right? Because you got an 18-year-old or a 19-year-old guy that says like, oh, I'm going to go start a power washing business, for example, right? Like he's going to go buy the piece of equipment. He's going to make a bunch of mistakes. He's not going to know how to market. He's not going to know how to hire. He's not going to do that because he's still figuring it out, right? So he might spend 10 years getting to a $25,000 to $30,000 a month business. Whereas if he were to buy into a franchise, invest that, he gets his time back and he follows a system. And now maybe he's doing that, monthly much quicker.
Like much better. I think the missing part for me, one of the things that, you go to college and you work in a career because you want professional development. You want to become more astute and trained at whatever field you're going to go into. I was a journalism major and I worked for the newspaper in New Orleans, and I worked, my mentors were the editors at National Geographic, and, I learned from some of the best people in the business, and what a franchise offers somebody is as a path for professional development. I think that's the thing that a lot of people, like if you've been in franchising a long time, you think of just selling franchises, awarding franchises, recruiting franchises. And somebody obviously wants the business so they can make money. That's the way it's real one dimensional. But really, running a service franchise from you or me is a way for a younger or even a middle-aged person who needs to retrain to learn a whole new skill of how to be independent, how to have the money tree, how to scale a business, and spend 3 years with me or you, and you're going to be able to run any business. You're bankable. Like you have skills, you have the results, you got the data, you know how to manage people. You'll run into every problem that you probably can run into, and then it's like learning to ride a bike at some point. People become competent in business acumen past a certain point. So I'm really bullish. I think they call it the roaring 20s for the right reason. I think service is where the action's at. And, I think even no matter how competitive, like some of the smaller brands like ours, we're really nimble. Like you're bringing a very specific set of learnings you learned at Patch Boys and ChemDry, and you're going to market. And even if there were, like my closets brand, there's 15 closet franchises. We run circles around those guys. Yeah. Because we're just more nimble.
Yeah.
We understand how to position it better. We understand how to get people in business and get them up to running, and how to do the marketing better. There's always room. I learned this from Amit Kleinberger, the guy who started Minchie's. We did a lot of the development work on that. And yogurt's one of those massive, frozen desserts in general, but yogurt at its heyday, or one of the many heydays it's had in yogurt. There'd be 10, 15 brands. There was Sweet Frog and Blue Mountain and Minchie's and Baskin Robbins and TCB and all those brands. There were thousands and thousands of people buying yogurt franchises. And for a couple of years, that was the kind of category of the day.
Right.
And he would always open his discovery days. He said, there's always room for a better operator. It doesn't matter how crowded a space is. The more people, the better. That just is a testament to how much demand there is for the service. But you can always come in and do a better job of customer service, product quality, responsiveness, taking care of people. You just add value. And I think that's the name of the game in service. And I think people get lazy in our industry because they get mature and they're not, hungry, and they have really profitable balance sheets. And, people like you and I come along and upend the whole industry. It's super fun.
Exactly.
I love it.
Exactly.
There's a lot of opportunities, a whole new crowd of people getting into the space.
Totally.
Cool, Aaron. Any
100%.
other thoughts before we wind down on kind of why service is king and why people should look at these kind of trade-based businesses, the service business, things that were formerly a blue collar?
Yeah. I mean, the only other thing I'll add, just from it being an attractive like it's recession proof, recession resistant, right? Like these are services that are needed. If you run a business and you've got black mold on the side of your building, it doesn't matter what's going on in the stock market. Like you're going to get that power wash, because otherwise your customers might not come into your business because they're going to see how disgusting your building looks, right?
Yeah.
Like, or if you, same thing with like a real estate agent, right? Who's trying to sell a house. He can't sell a house if there's algae on the roof or whatever, right? So like, I think a big attractive element to a lot of these white collar folks, as well as these newcomers from lower, younger generations, are seeing that as like, all right, well, the economy doesn't really matter. I'm going to invest in this because ultimately, like, I'm still going to be able to make money despite the ups and downs. Whereas like with food or, retail or, health and wellness, right? You had, that was decimated by the pandemic, the health and wellness thing. So like, and so was food. So all these things dropped down in terms of the priority list, and service just skyrocketed, especially after the pandemic.
Yeah.
So I think that's another reason why it's such a, kind of new white collar, industry, is that consistency in business, regardless of what's going on in the economy.
Yeah. Well, it's an awesome time to be in business for sure. Well, thanks for joining me today. And
thanks for having me.
You can look me up on LinkedIn, Thomas Scott. I'm Home Run Franchises, homerunfranchising.com. I'm on TikTok and Instagram under official Thomas Scott. Aaron, where do we find information on Rolling Suds if somebody's
rollingsudsfranchise.com is where I'm at. And then, we're getting out there. We announced last week, and we've already got a lot of people interested in moving forward. So
Sweet.
It's going to be an exciting time.
Yeah. Awesome. Thanks so much, man. Good to have you today.
Thanks.